Hello, internet friends. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Lindsay LiJo, and today I have a very special guest, no other than himself, Eric from Talking with Famous People. We're going to be talking about how different functions perceive the same thing and how each function could approach it differently. We're going to be triangulating with ourselves and the other functions out there. So with that, I would like to welcome Eric. Hello.
Hi, LiJo, and hi, viewing.
So very excited. Eric and I we've known each other in the community, I'd say, for a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For a while.
Yeah. I've watched Eric's live streams for I don't know how many years. And so, yeah, happy to have his expertise. Huh?
The funny thing is when people doubt it's actually you who's there.
I know. It's weird.
They go, that's not LiJo.
I'm like, what secret do I have to tell you so that you know that it's the real me? But
Right.
Luckily, Winston's mom's usually there being like, no, it's her. All right. So what I've done today is I picked up some kind of facets of the human experience. And these are some things that people have said on the internet that are frustrations of theirs or just kind of life moments that we all go through. And what we're going to do is, look at both of ourselves, but then also kind of see what is the best function, what is the best tool for the job. If you were to be able to select one and throw that key in the ignition, how would that go forwards? So to start off, this is one that I've heard a lot of people struggle with, but not until they realize the repercussion of doing it. And that is oversharing when you say too much, maybe in an environment that really isn't conducive to oversharing. So start off, Eric, what's your experience with oversharing? Or is it not something that really hits with you at all?
Yeah, as far as I can tell, I can't overshare because I'm not compelling you to help yourself to that serving of food, right?
Right.
So it's like, if you find me oversharing, go away, is my thoughts on that. Extroverted intuition, introverted thinking will link to either probably strong privacy if somebody is unhealthy / immoral, or total transparency if somebody's basically healthy and decent,
Mm-hmm. I've heard a few people with extroverted intuition say about, well, they had FI too, but say about like when they're in a social environment, they'll try to kind of elevate the vibe a little bit. And then sometimes that can lead to their NE being expressed, sometimes in a place maybe where it shouldn't. But it seems like generally yours is kind of confined to the live streams and so on.
Well, one reality is that I think all extroverted intuitors have almost all have an unfulfilled need to spew and be heard. And so it's having YouTube and being able to spew and be at least heard by somebody for thousands and thousands of videos has really made my time when I'm not talking on the internet more quiet. As I think Rachel will attest to. A lot of times we just drive around in silence. I used to talk a lot more, but I think I feel like I get my recommended daily allowance of it, so it doesn't come out inappropriately in bad spots. But I think if we don't have an appropriate outlet, it will spill over them. And if they're ENTP especially, they're not even going to be aware that it's important to them, really. So
that's really good. So what would you say are some other functions that would have an issue with oversharing? That's actually a great tactic too, to be like, have an outlet for it and get it all out that way, and then be okay other places.
Well, I mean, extroverted feeling is really the function frame through which the idea of oversharing even exists, which is to say, there are social standards by which we're all judging each other, and we expect you to uphold them as well, which is to say, I don't want to hear about how wet your poop was this morning, and that's going to gross me out. And if you do it, you're going to be awkward. So the whole thing kind of comes through an FE frame of reference. I think that the person that would be most bothered by having overshared, in other words, be most fretful about whether or not they overshared, would be somebody who's FE tool probably, but could be FE Dom. third slot's just too narrow and selfish to really care about that much. And fourth slot's just not competent enough, really.
Yeah. Then that makes sense. I think for myself, the sorry, I'm just choking on my water. The oversharing doesn't necessarily come because I'm always very cautious of what information I let out and how people could leverage that. And so that's kind of always on the front part of my mind. And I'm always like, is this information important? If it's not, then I'll just, there's no reason for it. So I'll kind of just, it doesn't go out anywhere. And that has its cons as well. But I would say from my function perspective, doesn't hit as much. Totally makes sense what you're saying with FE being the frame of reference, though. The whole concept of oversharing is inherently FE.
And TE, in contrast, loves to do and possible harms, obviated. So the TE user, especially if they're extroverted intuition in the front stack, like my dad's an ESTJ, he uses his extroverted intuition almost entirely to think of possible ways his plan or goal directionality stuff could go wrong.
Right.
And sometimes I'll say, Dad, that's never going to happen. Say, well, son, you're an optimist, but I'm a pessimist. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst.
I get that, Dad. Yeah, no, that's good. So if you had to, okay, so I guess like even if you looked at the 16 types, do you think extroverted feelers would tend to overshare more, or is there a specific type that you think would kind of lock onto this as being more of an issue, or not really so much?
I mean, I would guess that probably INFP is the type to most frequently talk about stuff that other people might accuse of being oversharey. So to be like something that you oversharing, it really has to be something that is either gross, like bathroom stuff, or adult gross, like sex, or I guess it could be also, but it could also be like emotional stuff. So if you keep telling people about like, oh, and this is how I feel about Joey, and this is how I'm not sure, blah, 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 somebody could say, okay, you're oversharing. And in that context, I think it would be most likely to be an INFP.
What about the person that's like, they're in their workplace environment and they're like, man, this one time back in college, we were all doing mushrooms and this and that. And there's some like uptight ISTJ in the corner who was like getting all this information that they probably didn't need to hear. What kind of type do you think that'd be associated with? INFP still?
ENTP, probably. ENTP or ESTP. Yeah. Because the thing is with TI tool function, like it seems so obvious to me that my drug use outside of work is irrelevant to my job performance in my work, or during my drug use during work for that matter. It's totally irrelevant to my work performance. So I just assume everybody else doesn't think anything about it because why would they? After all, there's no good reason to. But of course, that's just TI tool making a mistake of assuming other people. We all tend to project our own frames of reference onto everybody as a default.
Oh yeah. Awesome. Okay. Oh shoot, I forgot I had these things. Okay, intentional sharing. #networking. Again, one of those social types of situations, but a big fear for a lot of people. And so how does it hit with you?
Well, the problem with networking is it's TE framed social interaction. So social interaction designed to do something other than socially interact. It renders social interaction instrumental. For me, social interaction is an absolute value, and I don't like the idea of trying to use my friendliness with somebody to accomplish something. It seems like,
oh, come on.
Like it seems like if your friend becomes an Amway salesman and all of a sudden they're like, come on, buy some Amway shit. And it's like, what the hell? So, I lost my train of thought. Oh, networking, right? It's just on the screen. I don't have to leave my train of thought. It's right there. So I don't really network per se. Like, for example, I'm grateful and appreciate you making this happen because you're bigger than I am. So people who successfully network, they collaborate with people who are bigger than them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not with people who
Ideally.
are smaller than them. Although that might help too. But in general,
Mm-hmm.
if you it's probably harder to get somebody bigger than you to collaborate with you than it is somebody to get somebody smaller than you to collaborate with you.
Mm-hmm.
So, I appreciate this, but it's not the sort of thing that I typically will ever try to make happen.
Right.
Partially because I'm selfish with my FE, I guess, and partially just because I'm not utilitarian. So I'm not really looking for measurable outcomes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I think the strange thing about networking for myself is I'd rather not, if at all possible, especially in real life situations. But if there's no other option to slither by and get that same thing done another way, I know that could be the answer, and therefore I will. So it really depends on if there's in my case, like an easier solution to get to the same result, in which I'd rather do that and kind of cut out the people, because the more people you bring in, a lot of times the more things that brings up that you have to then deal with, because there's just more integration. So I usually won't do that. But if that is the only option, or the way I see it, the only way to get to the thing that you want the easiest, then I'll drive through that way too.
Well, it occurs to me, networking is a word that TE people came up with to justify having friends.
I agree. They can't meet their friends at a bar. They have to be like, I'm going to a networking event.
Right. And the thing is, you probably guessed that an FE type would be best at it. But the problem is that ignores the fact that if somebody walks in not only with the skills of the function, but the frame of reference as well. So an FE type is going to be like me. They're going to say, well, I'm not here to use my friends for some outcome. Even if they are most able in theory to do so.
Yeah. And they really are you're right. They are completely the best actual genuine networkers, because they're not actually trying to network at all.
Right. So nobody's feeling like they're being manipulated or exploited because they're not trying to get anything out of it, which is missing the point of networking, right? Which is to get something from it.
Exactly. Dang, that's good. So that being said, I think we kind of answered the second part of this, which is kind of what function does it best. And I would agree. I think that genuinely FE would rule over TE, even though TE uses it to justify their own behavior.
Right. Yeah. It's basically FE in theory could be better, but if it were better, then it would be TE, and then it wouldn't be FE anymore because it would be focused on the outcome.
Yeah. There's just the internet calls it out well. They're just like, there's this cringe factor about TE that if you just browse through a few different websites that are trying to like get you in on anything, that TE just resonates with an embarrassing level.
Why, from the TE's perspective in general, I think, why do you have a self? To improve it. To smash the weakness out of it.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not a very warm relationship with the self, right?
No, it's weird.
Let's go on to the next thing. Push the next thing.
All right, giving up too soon.
I mean, the thing is, I don't really ever give up. I just back burner and pretend like I'm not giving up, and then sometimes I get back to it and sometimes I don't. It's really hard to predict. For an extroverted intuitor, I probably for both ENTPs and ENFPs, but maybe more so for ENTPs. The challenge is I have way too many good ideas and way too little effort at keeping track of them. So I've got my Google Docs is littered with documents that I've made, forgotten I made, never did anything with. You know, just like about cognitive functions, about whatever. My my Google Drive, similarly with images and stuff, and it's an ongoing, forever struggle because it becomes ever increasingly harder to direct the amount of attention necessary to archive something properly the longer you live.
That's true. The longer you live, the greater the problem becomes. And it also becomes a minefield of gold for someone who doesn't have extrovert intuition. Maybe you could just like sell your Google Drive to anyone who wants to like come in there, charge them a fee to go wait around in your ideas.
Well, yeah, I do want at least somebody eventually to open up my theme restaurant Wrong Hole, which only serves the anuses of various creatures.
That's great.
I'm not sure.
I think someone in Brooklyn would do it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm going to have the funding to launch this restaurant myself. So if anybody out there in the viewing audience wants to take the idea and launch it for themselves, you're welcome to. I won't sue you or anything. Go for it.
I could see that, like someone from Brooklyn, like using that as like a sustainability tactic. Like we're helping the earth and preserve our natural resources by using the anuses of animals as our main cuisine.
We feature only locally sourced anuses from nearly 20 different species native to North America. Yeah. It's just like the Neanderthals ate.
Yep. Oh my gosh. One day, see a New York Times article on it.
Okay, so what's a good function for giving up too soon? I mean, what do you mean by that? What would be like?
Okay, so not a good function, but someone who, because a lot of people consider this a problem. So what is a function that you think may run into this more? I know I've seen it with people with extroverted sensing, is that they want to change it up really quick. So if something isn't working fast, they're kind of on to the next thing.
Okay, I'd say that's probably true of all action types. So both your extroverted sensors and both your extroverted intuitors are like that. I would say that probably the best follow through is SE6. Your ESFJs and ESTJs have fantastic follow through.
Yeah, so, I would definitely agree.
I do think follow through links to SE, but it links to SE as a demonstrative subject in the world. So it's like your sixth slot is going to maintain in ways that look good, and your dominant is got this ongoing battle between a desire to opportunistically pull the trigger and to see through that bullet you just shot and make sure you skin and get the animal that you killed with it, right? So like, there's a whole, once you decide to shoot a deer, if you're hunting, the whole process has begun. And SE will probably have no problem, an SE Dom will have no problem completing that whole thing. But an NE Dom will shoot that animal and get over there and go, oh my God, this is so hard. What? I had no idea it was going to be so hard to cut up an animal and skin it.
Yeah. I don't want to do things.
I tried for like 45 minutes and she's like, fuck it. I don't care. Leave it here. Goodbye.
No, that's a great point. And I think, SE6 would be a nice place for that to fit in for people who are more consistent with it. I think my problem can sometimes be is like I'm very comfortable ignoring maybe when I need to take a moment.
I'm fine. I'm momentarily camera shy. Go ahead.
Okay. When I need to take a break and pull myself away and like, eat a piece of food or something. So it's more like I need to integrate giving up more within my not giving up.
You need to integrate giving up more into your not giving up.
Like giving up momentarily.
So are you somebody who goes down with a sinking ship, who has a sunken cost fallacy, who chases after previous bad decisions with doubling down on them?
No, I wouldn't say like previous bad decisions, but like if I kind of have my eyes set on something, the world could kind of like no matter what pace I'm moving at, that it could be very slow that I'm getting towards that thing, whatever it is. But if that's where my line of sight is, kind of any sensor could kind of come in, and I'm very closed off to it, and I'll just kind of continue going forward, even when it's not good for my health, for my whatever other situational things are happening. Just going forward.
Well, one thing I would note about this that occurred to me is that sometimes when people try a solution and it doesn't work the first time, it didn't work because they didn't do it quite right. And then they go, well, that solution's no good. And you go, oh yeah, no, you need to try it again. You did it wrong the first time. Give it a chance to work, you know?
Oh yeah. And then you have information to base your next decision off of so it can work better. That's just puzzling.
The thing is, I think that has to do with poor TE. So in other words, the worse your TE is, the less faith you have in a failed approach. So even if it's the right approach and it failed because you did it wrong, you're going to assume it was the wrong approach. The worse your TE is.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, good one. Okay, moving on to the next one. So I use this as a metaphor for the concept as a whole. The lost keys dilemma, just AKA the lack of organization in the physical world. So what's your take with your function stack?
I mean, obviously, in my opinion, in general, the management of space objects is primarily linked to FI. Well, there's space objects, they're objects in space, right?
That's what I was saying.
Where like a video is not an object in space. It's an object on YouTube, but it's not really an object in space, you know?
Right.
But space objects annoy the hell out of me. But SI high up deals with them well. Now, SI high up with FE actually deals with it kind of half-assedly. It's kind of a constant struggle for ISFJs. But they still know where everything is that they have and all the stuff that they have. And it's like, you know, SI DOMs, they love this physical resource management stuff. SIT, like Cameron's crazy with this physical resource stuff. He's got, you know, if you're traveling somewhere with Cameron and you're in Cameron's car, and there's somebody stopped by the side of the road who's got their car broken down, and let's say it's, you know, it's got like the pistons have blown or something. He's got, don't worry, I've got all the tools for it right here.
That has to be convenient. And I've actually seen that from even people with NE higher up, that they will sometimes like pull out those resources when you're not expecting them to. But I will see the NE users kind of struggle more on the day-to-day of the losing the keys dilemma, or the thing that they needed to have at that moment, and now the house is burning down, and they had a fire extinguisher this one time, and it exists, but
you know what I do remember? The video from 2017 that proves you wrong in this moment that I made.
Oh,
I remember that. Right?
Yeah.
I don't remember it until I need to remember it to prove you wrong. Then wait, where was that video?
Yeah. The TI is motivating like the SI out of it.
But it's crazy to say lost keys. Rachel and I leave the house fairly frequently, every day, probably a couple times a day, usually, or something, to go on some errand or whatever. I shit you not, at least half the time, maybe not quite half, but close to half the time, I get halfway down the driveway and realize I don't have my keys with me. I left them in the house. Now, obviously, I'm not going to be able to go anywhere without my keys. It's a core item. So it's like, it would be understandable if I was forgetting something that was unusual that I don't normally bring with me. But how I managed to forget my goddamn keys every other time I leave the house is beyond me. It's just like, I hate space objects. I will sit here and hold them though. Like this lighter will never leave my hand for the rest of the day unless I force myself to put it down, Eric. That's my relationship to space objects.
Do you ever assign areas to your space objects so you know where to reference them the next time you need them?
Well, I mean, the thing is, Rachel's better at that than I am. Rachel's a lot better at that than I am. I assign stuff in general an area. Like I put my wallet, keys, and sunglasses and phone over there somewhere, which is to say, up on this thing. Wait, I don't need to turn this whole thing around. I just need to turn the camera around. Yeah, Eric. I put it up on this thing, right? This black thing. Okay. I put it on either the top or the second shelf. And then the problem is, of course, sometimes I put them down here. Underneath that thing. I rarely put them anyplace else unless I go straight in there and then I have my keys and wallet and then I put them on the side of the bed stand. So the problem is I can't stick with a plan to put things any place.
So you have multiple landing pads for your space objects.
I mean, most of them I hope I don't have to keep track of, but there's your small personal items you have to take with you. Women have a purse sometimes. That helps. You put all your wallet, your keys, your phone, your glasses, your cigarettes, your lighter, and your purse, and no problem. But I don't carry a purse. And the problem with carrying a purse is even if I did carry a purse, I have something in my hands I have to carry. Whereas if I have everything in my pockets, then it's just in my pockets.
Pockets are the best. Gosh. For myself, I have my wallet is connected to my keys, so I can never, if I have one, I have the other. And then my phone is its own entity, but the thing is my watch, I can ping my phone with it, so I can find it then pretty quickly that way if I leave it somewhere, which I do. I'll accidentally put it down somewhere and then
for your phone.
Oh gosh, I somehow accidentally transferred my AirPods over now to my iPhone. Hold on. Let's see. Okay. Oh, no. Okay. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Well, I can only hear you through the speakers on my laptop. That's okay. I can reselect audio. There we go. See, Lindsay, that's what you get for trying to demo your. Okay, now we're good. All right, so moving on past the last keys. Well, yeah, and I would say too, yeah, I think SIs, they own not losing the keys and having a home for. There was an SI lady on YouTube, and what really fascinated me is like she was talking about her home organization tips, and she was like, well, one of the things you should always remember is never put something down, put it away. And what I thought was so interesting is I was like, she just made the assumption that people have an away for their item. I was like, so many people don't have an away. She's like, oh, just put it away. I'm like, they don't have that. You know what I mean?
The funny thing is, I heard that. I thought that's good advice. And the fact that I don't have an away doesn't seem to me to be an issue, because put it away just means if you don't have an away, decide where you're going to put it right then, I guess. But that capacity to decide where you're going to put it and give it a space, I guess. The problem isn't the ability to decide where to put it and give it a space. The problem is the ability to remember that space where you decided to put it.
Yeah.
Like we lost 3 or 4 frontline doses from the first box of frontline we bought, because after we applied 1 dose to the cat, I said, now we're going to put these other 3 doses right here. And I don't know, I cannot remember where it was that I said that about, and I can't find them.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? Yeah. All right. So actually, let's go past that one. Okay. When plans change, I know you went to go get lunch with your mom earlier, but then all of a sudden something happened, and now that whole thing can't happen anymore because another thing came in. Now you can deal with that thing instead. How is plans changing for you?
I mean, it doesn't bother me at all. I mean, very, very rarely. Like, or what bothers me a little bit more is a failure to make a plan if it's necessary. So, for example, right now, Rachel and I don't know for sure whether we are both invited to her cousin's wedding. In other words, she's +1, or if not, because of a variety of factors, including, they lost money in their first wedding, which got canceled because of COVID. And so they're trying to cut back on the amount of people, but whatever, a variety of dumb reasons. I don't care what the reasons are. I don't personally even particularly care about whether or not she's +1 or not, except I care that she cares. So I'm on her side, but the thing is, they won't tell us an answer. And Rachel's been fretting about it now for 2 months, and they keep humming and hawing and not making a decision. So last time we talked to her family, I got a little bit frustrated with the sort of laissez-faire approach, because it was like, okay, y'all don't give a fuck, but Rachel does, and this is causing her discomfort, and she wants to know, But also, we'd like to make travel plans at this point, since it's in August.
Yeah. A lot of things factor into knowing what the plan is supposed to be. It's like never just like, okay, I know that I can bring someone or not. It's like, okay, well, if I do bring someone, then that means that they will need a thing for a wedding dress for the thing, and that I will, need to plan for another seat on the plane. And then they will need to know to take this amount of time off work or whatever it is. And so it's never just a simple, oh, yes and no. There's things connected to it, and so that's one of the reasons why I don't prefer, if all that energy is going into how something should like turn out and like the flow of events, there's so much connected to it that when something does change, it's just like, okay, now I have to reorganize all of those pieces that were in place. And usually they were in a good place to have things go with as little chaos as possible, Right. And now it's like, okay, now I have to shuffle the blocks around and make it so it works okay again.
So would that mean then that you're never the one who changes plans?
I do not. No, I don't change plans. It has to be a really good reason to, but it's really hard to find that reason often. I find that usually this used to get me worse when I was younger, but I'd have like my day planned out for myself. People can do their own thing. But then someone will come in and be like, hey, I gotta stop by and bring this thing over, or hey, I'm in town for 2 hours. I'm gonna, and to me, I was like, you don't understand that, like, I had the time of my day was perfect. I was going to get X, Y, and Z.
Hush, sweetie. Hush. Just sit down. I want you to have a whole glass of iced tea and listen to me tell you my stories about how my daughter and her friends are so adorable. No. Yes, that's what we're doing. Just sit down, sweetie. You probably don't have friends like that, huh?
No, none. Zero. And people, and like, that's the other thing is like, if someone knows that like I need to leave at a certain time, there's no dragging me around to like hang out longer. Like I'll Irish goodbye and I'm out the door, because it's like I very much value time, and I allot my time so that I'm using it in the best way. And when people don't respect that, I just can't have the time for them.
All right. So what do you consider a good use of time? If you've had a lot of fun, but it hasn't had any impacts outside of that, do you consider it a waste of time?
Well, if that's what I plan for the time to be, then that's fine. So
you plan your fun?
Well,
from 4 to 5 today, I'm having fun. Then at 5, I'm back to work.
Well, I wouldn't say it like that, but I would say like, okay, I'm planning, like, I'm going to spend this time to this time for like a leisurely activity that's just for its novelty. There's no purpose behind it. It's for enjoyment's sake. I'm going to go.
Do you have an example of something just genuinely non-useful that you enjoy doing?
Playing poker.
Oh. I mean, but do you win?
Yeah.
That's not useful then, is it? That's profit.
Well, so you don't win every single time, right? And it's for the enjoyment of the game, and so like there's times during the week where I'm like, okay, I could spend 2 to 3 hours doing something that's productive, but I'm gonna play poker instead. It'll be great.
Yeah, I just, what's funny is I just played poker yesterday or whatever, and I just found it ultimately, and I seem to get this way every time I start to play it a little bit more frequently. I just find it boring. Ultimately, it takes so much patience. It takes such a long time to play well, and I would probably find tournaments more enjoyable, but they're hard to find. Poker rooms don't like to put on tournaments because they're less profitable than rate games.
Yeah, I find that for myself, it's like I have to know quickly if I feel like I'm at the right table with the right people, because I mean I play only online.
I only play in person, but it's still absolutely true. At the right table is the critical factor. Ultimately, it's like you have a table where everybody's playing too much like a rock, you know. Then you can't ever get any action when you get any cards. You get some table where every hand is raised and re-raised before the flop, then you can't really play anything but top cards, and it's just like, Jesus.
Yeah, I know.
It requires too much patience.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's like if I tune in to like quickly to like, okay, this isn't the right table for me to be on, like, and I switch, then I'm usually having a good time. But if I hang out because I'm like, oh, well, you know, there's no other tables open, or let me just, you know, stick it out, then I'm just like, this isn't fun anymore.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's also, it's like, it gets interesting. It gets more interesting with the higher stakes, but it gets more difficult too. So it's like, I can sit there and toss around cards at the 40-80 buy-in table and gradually accrue chips over the course of a day, most of the time probably. But I'm not making very good money per hour.
Yeah. That's the experience.
Let's go to the next
one. Huh?
Let's go to the next
one. Okay. I feel like this is probably going to be more for people with TE over FI that are going to be like, oh, maybe. But I don't know. So from your perspective, this is something that people say that they struggle with, or is a frustration, is when they didn't stand up for something that maybe they felt as though they should have. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I can think of a couple of examples from my life of me doing that, and I find them, they're like, you know, they're the worst, my worst parts of myself. It's like any kind of all previous wickednesses stick with you for some such time, but tend to have a statute of limitations. In other words, you stop feeling guilty about something you did bad long ago if it's been enough time. Depending on the severity of the thing as well, you know. None of my bad behaviors in life haven't been terribly bad, but I can think of instances where I should have stood up for something that I didn't. Man, I can think of instances where I should have stood up for someone and I didn't. Like I can think of an instance right now, which was from probably 30. No, well, it wasn't that long because Delilah was a baby-ish or 2 or 3 or something. So it was like 20 years ago. Where I was in a movie theater, and I didn't like the way these parents were dealing with their child, and I elected at the no with the woman I was with. I elected not to say anything, but I wish I had.
That's a good one. Yeah,
I still remember it, and that was like 20 years ago.
Yeah, then that has meaning behind it. I would say for myself, there's not really many instances where it's always, I guess, been more of a calculated choice if I have or if I haven't. But there is, I guess, times where I wish I could have been a louder force in standing up for whatever that thing was, but for whatever reason, I was limited in my reach. And so I felt like I couldn't have the impact that I wanted to on that subject. But yeah, I guess that's kind of my...
I don't necessarily need to have an impact. It's weird. It's like, as long as I know I said the right thing at the right time, right people, it's fine. I don't care if it impacted them or not, or had any impact on the situation. I just need to know that I didn't say the wrong thing. So whatever bad behavior on their part is their responsibility, and I have no part in it.
Who do you think has the easiest time, or what function has the easiest time standing up for the thing when they feel as though it's the right time to.
ISFP.
Mm-hmm.
ISFP.
Damn them and their perfection.
It's like the you hear about how bears when they've got cubs are dangerous to be around, right? Mother bears when they have cubs. Mm-hmm. Actually, only some mother bears are dangerous when they have cubs. ISFP mother bears, they will tear you to shreds.
Fair enough. Okay, next one. Options. We'll just categorize this as too many options, aka what to eat for dinner.
Okay, yeah. Well, it also could be interpreted as a relationship question. What do you want? Well, I don't know. What do you want to eat for dinner? This is a question that is troublesome between intuitives. It's not troublesome if you ask an ISFJ this question. What do you want to eat for dinner? I would like to eat fried chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, corn, and
good point. Yeah.
But for intuitives, we don't really care about the food. And for two intuitives who are FE, like me and Rachel, we prefer to demonstrate being a team player on things we don't care about. Because then we're not actually giving up anything, but we get credit for being a team player, right? The implicit strategy to FE. But so, like Rachel will never eat the last anything. And for a long time in the beginning of our relationship, I wouldn't either. So every time we had something with 12 pieces, there'd be one piece that just sat there until we threw it away.
The standoff for the last piece that no one will eat.
Well, but it's not because we don't want it. It's because we don't want to be accused of taking the last piece. Which is so silly.
So weird. Yeah. That's funny. And I get what you're saying with like if someone asks me, like, what do you want to eat for dinner? I feel like it's more appropriate to say, I don't know, versus like, I don't care, which I don't care is really the answer, is like, I could eat the granola out of the bottom of my backpack. And like, I'm fine with that. Like, I'm good. I've been eating, that's what I've been eating all day, and I'll still eat it. But like, I don't know. Well, yeah. What do you want? It's easier to kind of default the responsibility of making the sensory choice that way.
I gotta say, you make a cheap first date.
Oh yeah.
Here, have some granola on the bottom of my backpack.
you want to find it? You can dig for it yourself down there. Who knows what else you'll find? Probably some vitamins rolling around in there to supplement what I missed from only eating the granola. I think that the sensory will. They definitely feel like they give you the quickest answer.
Yeah, but the other thing I think that's relevant to note here is where they value fairness. So depending on how much they consider fairness to be an inherent absolute value, then they may be fussy about not getting half the choices if their partner isn't, like, if instead of it being, what do you want to eat? I don't know. What do you want to eat? What do you want to eat? Well, like that instead it's like one partner says, we're eating meow every time. The other partner, if they value fairness as an absolute value, even if they don't mind what they're eating, are still going to be unhappy because they're not being afforded an equal number of choices. That would be INFJ or ISFJ would both do that with third slot TI for sure.
Great point. All right. So this one, I know this hits hard with certain types. Not getting the credit you deserve. Thoughts?
I mean, I've done a number of things in my life. I'm primarily a YouTuber now, and typologist, but for most of my career, I was a debate coach or some of the time an English teacher. But the thing is, I never felt like I didn't get didn't get adequate credit in any of my professional endeavors. I just felt like I never got particular much attention paid to me in my creative endeavors. And I generally I've never really felt particularly hatery about it. I just think, well, that's because I'm doing stuff less successfully than other people, and as measured by those metrics. And I, the thing is, you got to be honest with yourself at a certain point and go, okay, well, no matter how much I resolve to do, it's like, it's not about successfully executing beautiful video. It's about successfully executing a certain aesthetic consistently over time.
Right.
But my nature is to always want to switch it up with something new, to always want to, and then I default back to this because it's easy. It's just what's behind me.
Yeah. Yeah.
You look fantastic, by the way. I gotta say, you look crispity, super crisp. The black-white background looks great. It's very contrasty. You must be at like 1080 or something. I don't know.
This is not the camera I usually use it, but I did get like this webcam like new thing, and it is crispy, and so it was only like $30 on Amazon. So I was like, you can't go wrong with that.
You're looking a little shiny though. You're gonna need to get one of those people that comes around with a thing that goes.
Oh, like listen. I was walking the dogs when I got like your email response, and I was like, okay, getting back inside. And then it's like, I had just taken a cayenne pepper pill. And so I'm like sweating from the inside, and then it's hot where I live. So,
Why did you take a cayenne pepper pill?
So it's a long story, but like whenever like I feel like tightness in my legs, I'm like, well, just in case like there could be a blood clot in there, I'm just gonna take a cayenne pepper, because cayenne pepper actually like breaks up clotting, and so
Does it give you heartburn though? Doesn't it give you heartburn?
No, not if you have something in your stomach before it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I get heartburn kind of easily, so.
Gotcha. Well, if somebody you never know is like having a heart attack, like shove 5 cayenne pepper pills down their mouth and make them swallow it, and like it helps.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I'll share an equivalent life hack. If you have a wart, just go ahead and put a piece of aloe vera, actual plant, on it with the mushy part down on the wart. Tape it there. Leave it there for a few days. The wart will go away and never come back. You won't have to go get it frozen off again and again and again. I had a wart where it used to be like that on my arm here. I had to go get it frozen off every couple of months. Till the nurse at a school I worked at said, put a piece of aloe on it. And I did. I kept it there for a couple of days. The whole thing swelled up, dropped off, and I never came back again.
Oh, dang. I wonder, I had burned myself like a few years ago on the top of my hand, and it would have healed, except I like continually pick at it. And I wonder if that would be a good way to stop myself.
Aloe is generally all-purpose good for any kind of skin stuff, any cuts, burns, whatever.
Yeah, you can drink it too, which is fascinating.
Disgusting though.
Yeah. The spending spree. Okay.
You go first.
I don't think it no, it doesn't hit with my functions in particular. I'm trying to think of times like when I've had to make bigger purchases, but it's always based on what I need, not versus what I want. So that kind of takes out the spree funness of it, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I'm not a spending spree person either. I don't find it gratifying to buy things very much, but sometimes costs do get away from me. Like I anticipate this kind of level of expense and it ends up being higher. For example, when we went to Laughlin on vacation, like an idiot, I ran out of gas on the way back, and like halfway from Needles to Palm Springs or something like that. And it cost me $250 for the tow truck to bring me 5 gallons of gas. And then,
oh my gosh.
And then after I put that 5 gallons of gas in, I stopped at the very next gas station I saw, which is out in the middle of nowhere, of course. Which if I had a little bit more gas, I could have gotten to. But I filled up the rest of the way there at over $6 a gallon.
Oh my gosh. That's ridiculous. I was like, I wonder if you could have, like, they probably don't have Uber Eats there, but I was like, I wonder if you could have gotten like in some Uber Eats guy to like fill up the gas tank and bring it for cheaper than $250.
I mean, I didn't want to wait. We were in the middle of a long drive home too. It was late at night. I just wanted to get this
over.
I'm gonna go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I don't spend this free. Who does? FE DOMs will sometimes, like ESFJs will do that. ENFJs will be terrible with their money sometimes. They like to spend a lot to show things off, like buy everybody around to the bar or something.
Okay. My mom, who's an ISFP, she will talk about, like, if she used to back in the day, like, have a stressful day at work, she'd be like, oh, I'm going to do some retail therapy, which was just like her way of shopping to make herself feel better about whatever went on that day.
Yeah, my second wife, my ex-wife, did that too. That was also one of her terms. And the thing is, the house kept getting fuller. It was a small house getting fuller and fuller of stuff because it seemed like every goddamn day she'd get like 3 packages in the mail. And I mean, I'm not complaining about the spending exactly because, she worked full time and she could spend her money if she wanted to or whatever. I don't care. But the thing is, eventually, it's just like, okay, you started off with one closet in here because she moved into my house. Then you took over my closet. Then you took over Delilah's closet. Now you're taking over my space for a closet in the garage.
Yeah.
So you need to stop buying clothes.
It's the volume of things versus,
You're
just
never
the fact that you're spending.
When the hell are you going to wear all those clothes?
Never. They're trophies of money once had.
Yeah. In contrast, she'd buy shit tons of different shampoos and conditioners. That I didn't mind because I'd go in the shower and I'd say, what am I going to smell like today? Is it going to be melted guava? Is it going to be banana pineapple? They smell so much like real fruit too. It's like, I can eat this shit.
It's a new any experience.
Well, it's amazing how much they can make something smell like cucumber, apple, passion fruit, and have it really just clearly smell all 3 of those smells.
It's wild.
Yeah.
Look at us being impressed by the sensory. We're like, did you know shampoo can smell like real guavas?
It does.
All right. This is something I hear from people often too, is like they're talking about something that someone said or that they said one time that back in the day, and it hangs on them.
Yeah. I have what I said. I mean, I have a couple of instances of me bullying people in my youth. One in particular stands out from elementary school and one from high school and one from middle school. So I still remember them with shame and guilt.
But and that was what you said, but not what you said to someone else.
I don't remember what other people said to me. I mean, I remember being bullied some, but it was more physical, like, trip you or something like that. Their words didn't stick to me at all. I don't know. But I don't remember anything that any bully said to me.
I think the only thing, I don't really remember much either. But I more of a loner. But I do remember some early elementary age. I remember a girl said, you don't have the right kind of face to be our friend. And I was like, okay. I didn't know. I was like, I don't understand. But I think it's the only thing.
You should have punched her in the face and said, now neither do you.
That would have been a more fun response. I was like, what is it? Okay. But yeah, no, I think that generally things that people say are, people are going to say dumb things. People are going to say things that they regret saying later. It's just kind of like, everyone says wrong things and at some time, and that's just what humans do.
Yeah. It's like I was saying before about how guilt kind of goes away the longer the distance from a thing, depending on how bad it was. My guilt for that childhood stuff, it's just because it's like children behave so awfully to each other. And
they're terrible.
By and large, I didn't behave awfully to people, with a few exceptions where I kind of got swept up in a group thing or whatever. But it's at least scars on the psyche if you're an SI type anyway. I think NI types largely float over it
Mm-hmm.
without
Yeah.
retaining a whole lot of ballast after the fact, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Because it's, yeah. All right. So just a few more. Are you okay for like 3 more?
Whatever.
Okay. So this is one I hear often is the coworker / boss problems. You can just say problems in the workplace. A lot of times I'll hear people say that almost accusing of another person of like trying to do them wrong or trying to, you know, sabotage them or not getting credit. Just seems like a very turbulent view of them trying to be consistent. So what are your thoughts?
I mean, I suspect that coworker boss problems link a lot to typological relationships in the sense that I'm it like, for example, an ENFJ is going to have a hard time impressing me
Mm-hmm.
because they're my beneficiary, and an ISTP is going to have a hard time impressing me because they're my supervisee. Basically,
Mm-hmm.
my worldview makes it such that what I can glean from them seems less valuable than it is to me. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, because I'm third slot FE, I think the ENFJ's FE is way too over the top, with too much. You know, stop trying to schmooze me. You know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and I find their NI to be clumsy compared to a dominant NI or fifth slot's judginess about it. I find their lack of SI to be sort of frustrating or something. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, but the thing is, if I had one as an employee, that would be a bit of a problem. In contrast, I had Abraham ESFJ as an employee with autonomy. He was my right hand man, and we work together great because we're activity partners. In other words, his FE is dominant, fine, but he's SI second, which is my fourth. So, you know, he's linking his FE to me particularly and personally, whereas the
Mm-hmm.
ENFJ is expecting me to be swept up in their universal FE. And I'm just like,
Not happening.
all right.
Yeah. Um, can you think of like what other functions do you feel like would maybe it is more of like the authority / trying to rank in authority kind of dilemma? What other functions jump
I
out
mean,
to you?
it's specific to the relationship, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
like if it's an INFP boss, then what's going to be a problem? Well, what's going to be a problem is somebody who is too, I guess, countervaluing of either FI or NE. So you're looking at
Mm-hmm.
somebody maybe like INFJ is countervaluing of FI, I guess, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
maybe an INTP or something like that is going to clash with an INFP because they both are deliberative types, but each fundamentally
Right.
thinks their own form of deliberation should have primacy here. So either the
Mm-hmm.
employee is going to constantly be going, she keeps doing this wrong, or the boss is going to keep going, she keeps ignoring how I'm saying to do it or what I'm saying to do or something, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I was gonna say originally I was like, I don't really see like what the problem like it's through my lens, I'm just like, okay, I'm more focused on how can I make the fewest amount of moves, but like that get the most done. Um,
How
and that's just
efficient.
kind of like, and that doesn't really give me many issues, you know? Um, but what does get to me with people in the workplace is one, if people aren't just doing the thing that they're supposed to, like if you were hired to do this thing and then you can't do that thing, then that will annoy me. And then the other thing is if people say that they want something, but they don't know what it is. And then I call them out on the fact that they don't know what it is. And then it's just like, okay, I can't curate this thing for you if you don't even have it defined. I could make it up, but the thing is like, if I then, you know, figure out this would probably be the best thing that you would want, then everyone wants an opinion of like, oh no, but maybe I want it to be like this, or maybe you should have, you know, this over here or whatever. And it's like, I try to get people to make up their minds before, so that I don't have to do all the extra work on the backside when they're deliberating.
I'd be one of those difficult people for you then, because I would probably tell you, well, what I want is vague in general and not well defined, and what I want most of all is for whatever I do not to include things I don't want.
and I'm okay with that. It's like, and if you like let me have free reign, I'll come up with something good. And then if you're good with that, awesome. No problems. It's the people who are like, because they weren't able to define what they want, and then they're doing the defining process now with another person involved and with extra work being done, that's when I'm just like, nah.
Yeah. Go to the next one. I like these things, actually. At first, when you sent me this list, I thought, these things are dumb. Why is she sending me this stupid list of things? I actually like them a lot now.
You kind of, yeah, you get the, I think it brings in interesting conversation as a part of it. All right. Not taking that chance. Something, yeah, the opportunity to do it.
Yeah.
One shot.
I can think of a couple of things in particular, but one really stands out, which is back in college when I was too scared to get on this girl that I liked and who wanted me to get on her and was making it clear, but I had like a FE collapse or something. I still kind of regret that, although, I mean, you know, it's like, it was a long ass time ago, but it's like, I don't entirely regret it, because I felt like I learned something that night, which is you can't be 7th slot SE, Eric. You need to be at least 8th slot, you know. 8th slot's good enough, but 7th is not. So don't be a little bitch and just fucking handle your shit.
Yeah. I guess like the only time, I mean, there's a lot of chances that I choose not to take is the thing, but it's just more of like a time thing. It's just like, yeah, sure, I could take that chance, but is that chance going to cost X amount of hours? And if it is it worth it? And it's usually not. The only thing I can think of specifically was like, I was offered the chance to like go tour with this bluegrass band for like a year, and could have done it probably, but decided not to.
What would you have been playing or singing? Would you have been singing or playing?
I've been playing upright bass.
Upright bass, cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the other thing about that taking a chance thing is, I feel like I'm overindulgent with giving too many ideas a little bit of time to play, knowing that they're never really going to come to fruition, because it's kind of my nature. I'm trying to curtail that and be more focused and recognize that when I'm working on something, try to make it work, not just play. You know?
Yeah. Try to make it worth the while, worth the time that you're putting it into it. And I think there's also like a threshold of like taking chances in terms of like, okay, do you want to take a chance going skydiving with the skydive instructor who's like, you know, doing some other sketchy thing, and like hopefully you pack the parachute right? Yeah.
Hey, LiJo, if CS Joseph doesn't agree to take me up on my boxing match, you could box me.
I don't even have a cool response for it. I just feel like
we'd probably be about evenly matched. I don't know. Normally, men and women don't box each other, but I'm a pretty frail and very heavy smoking old man, so I think we're probably pretty evenly matched.
Could like boxing be like a metaphor for something else that doesn't require as much energy?
Want to play donkey water polo?
How do you play that?
We each get on a donkey, and there's a ball on the pool. It's a shallow pool. It's like regular polo, right? With a stick and the ball. But you're on a donkey, and they have to walk through shallow water.
Okay, I could do that.
Okay, donkey water
Probably
polo.
not successful. Donkey water polo it is.
Someday we'll have a heads-up match of donkey. We could play heads-up poker.
Oh, that'd be fun.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, I like heads up. Donkey water polo. It kind of sounds like the typology event that you would like curate and host that like all of the people would come out to. Like I'm talking with famous people.
I am planning on holding a donkey water polo tournament at the eventually to be held Talking with Famous People Ultra Symposium.
Sounds legit.
Also because it got donkey water polo.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people are going to show up for one or the other, but. Okay. So, caretaking, animals, humans, etc.
Yeah.
You have some fair experience in this.
Yeah, I'm actually, I'm a very loving caretaker of my animals and my child, for example, or my family or whatever. But that doesn't mean I'm particularly attentive. For example, Rachel will realize, oh no, the cat's been stuck inside the house for 4 hours. We should let her out or something, you know? She went in there, she wanted to come in, we let her in, then we went out and we forgot about her. Well, I'll forget about her all fucking day. And, like I'll go in there at 10 o'clock at night and go, oh shit, I'm sorry, cat. Even though I love the hell out of her and want to take good care of her and try my best. Bipolar means, you know, like my ex-wife used to come home and say, did you miss me? I'd say, no. Sure didn't.
Yeah. But I feel like that's more, I guess some people need that as a part of their caretaking, is to feel as though they've been missed or desired, you know?
I mean, to me, it sounds like they wish I had wasted my time while they were gone.
That's how it sounds to me too. Like that's how I perceive it as well.
Yeah, I mean, like, what do you think I was doing? Sitting around pining for you while you were gone?
Yeah.
No.
Is anyone really doing that though?
I mean, maybe
I don't think they are.
Maybe like war wives in old movies.
Yeah, but they didn't have the internet. I mean,
yeah, they were pretty. Yeah, it was easier to get bored back then.
Yeah, there's not much going on. I would say that my caretaking is pretty anticipatory. Like I will be like, okay, like make sure the dogs have water always, like in the morning first thing, you know, or like just kind of get things out of the way in like the process of caretaking, so that I don't have to think about them later. But it's just kind of like, it's just like, okay, I do these things, and then it's not a very like empathetic side of caretaking, you know, kind of to what you were saying. I don't need you to miss me.
There's an element of rub some dirt on it if there's an injury or something. You're fine, rub some dirt on it. Yeah.
Or like throw some rubbing alcohol on it. I was a lifeguard when I was in high school. Long story of how I got into that, but so the kids would run around the pool sometimes, you know, and you'd be like, stop running. And they wouldn't, you know, and then they would trip, fall, inevitably, skin their knees. And instead of using peroxide, which is like the nice thing to do, like I would use rubbing alcohol to teach them a lesson, to be like, next time you're not going to run around the pool.
I hope when you walked up to him, he said, well. A second ago, you were having too much fun to listen to me because you were running. Now look what happened. What a shame.
Make it a theatrical experience.
Big old theater. Absolutely.
Yeah. Another lifeguard like saunters around the corner with the first ticket.
Let me see. I got this document too. The ugly body part.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Is that a euphemism for the genitals?
Well, it could be. So this was another one from a list that I looked at that is one of people's greatest hangups, as they like to call it, is that one thing. Maybe it's their flabby armpit muscles.
For me, it's my nose. When I was younger, I didn't like that I had a big nose. The thing is, it really kind of became a non-issue when I grew a bigger beard. Then my face looked more normal.
Mm.
So I don't know.
At what age did you realize you thought that your nose was large? Or round?
I mean, I kind of deduced it because my mother, who has the same nose, would say things like, if you ever want to change any part of your body or something, she's basically saying you get a nose job if you want to, because she got kind of bullied about her nose, I think, when she was a girl. Mm-hmm. But I never did. Nobody ever called me big nose or anything like that. So it was kind of unintentionally, I was made self-conscious about it by my mom, who was trying to protect me from it, because nobody else
she brought it to your awareness.
Yeah, nobody else had anything to say about it.
Yeah. I think I feel like when I was younger, there were certain things that kind of popped up to consciousness at certain points. I felt like there was this one time when I was like 7, 8, 9, somewhere around that area. I feel like I looked in the mirror for the first time. Did you ever have that experience when you felt like you looked in the mirror and you actually saw like your physical body for the first time, even though you had looked in the mirror before?
Sort of. I can think of a couple instances. One time
being like,
for sure.
One time you were what?
One time when I was on acid, yeah.
Well, I mean, that's to be included, of course. But no, I remember like looking in the mirror and being like, that's what I actually, like, that's my actual skin bag. Like, those are my actual. And then I looked at my forehead and I was like, is everyone's forehead this large? Is this like, has my forehead always been this big? And then during that time frame, all I remember is my grandma was watching these ice skaters on TV, and there was some ice skater who also had a big forehead, some guy, and I was like, do I look like that guy? Like, I was just like really having like this existential thing of like seeing my own self, And
my forehead is definitely bigger than yours. It goes all the way back to here.
Oh, I mean, the hair factor.
No, I mean, I think the folks that are most likely to be super sensitive about this are probably NI and FE, I would guess, because they're going to be they're going to know objectively what they look like from the mirror rather than from their experience of their body, and they're going to know how others are going to be likely to perceive them. Rachel informed me one time when we were first together that the boys in her school did this very cruel thing and ranked all the girls like 1 to 100 or something. And Rachel was 50, right in the middle.
A passing grade, we could say.
I mean, the thing is, I'm thinking, well, the thing about cows, right? There's always a line of dominance in cows that the most dominant cow gets the food first, and then the least dominant cow gets the food last, right? And they did some studies that show that the happiest cows are the second and third most important cows. You don't want to be number one, and you don't want to be number end. Because number one, you're constantly having to check your back about whether they're going to come and usurp your position. Number two, they're just like, well, I can just chill. I don't want to usurp your position, so I'm perfectly comfortable just eating second. It's just as good as first, so what do I care?
Yeah, exactly. Slogan: be the second cow.
Be the second cow is the rule there. Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be a good bumper sticker.
It would be. Okay, and so this is like the last one. When you knew you were right, and possibly your rightness wasn't presented, acknowledged.
I was getting a lot, if you were right and getting a lot of pushback about it, maybe. Yeah, I have some familiarity with that. The thing is, what people hate more than anything else is the FE mistake of saying I'm right and people who disagree with me are wrong. Mm-hmm. Because in that sense, you're saying of all of these people, I stand out. I'm the one who's right. People who disagree with me are wrong. I am so superior to all these people that and so it's perceived as both unacceptably arrogant and necessarily delusional. So the challenge, of course, is what if that's actually the case? And you don't want to misrepresent reality, and yet you're aware fully that you can't self-aggrandize it all. Well, like my approach when it comes to cognitive functions is to try to stick to the actual arguments about the functions, to try to avoid at this point meaningless arguments with people who are making the same remedial 101 mistakes, asking the same stupid things and making the same dumb arguments. It's like I just don't need to waste my time with them. And then also to acknowledge that the thing that I'm right about is not really my creation in any sense. It is a community effort of seeing what happens when you put out data and all your shit you're doing for public scrutiny, and read the comments and are subjected to scrutiny, and acknowledging people are right and adjust accordingly. And of course, it's also a record of how an SI type like me learns to do something better over time. So I may have believed myself to be right when I did it at the beginning, but I was less confident about it for sure than I am now. So I may have made claims about being right about it, or righter probably, but I always kind of had a sense of where I was in my own knowledge. So when the very first video made about cognitive functions was literally me going, okay, so I'm an ENTP, which according to this website means I have extroverted intuition. And from what I understand, so it wasn't like me pretending like I'm making shit up, right? It's just that over a course of like 6 years of working with these things and being a debate coach and being trained or also habituated to picking out which arguments are bullshit. Which things don't withstand scrutiny, and also how to frame stuff so that you have a solid case that does withstand scrutiny. It ended up that, with the help of lots of people shitting on everything that had any possible shred of wrongness to it, that we've honed it down to something that's actually makes good sense now. But if I mention that I'm central to it at all, people hate me immediately.
Yeah. I think it's also a piece of right according to, like, where is the standard being held of rightness, of correctness, And so I could say I was right to go about these things to get to this place, right? And someone could be like, oh, well, that morally wasn't sound. Those decisions weren't sound. But that wasn't the standard in which I was tracking my correctness of getting there.
Okay, so what we're both displaying here is false to our respective frames. I assume right means that your argument wins the debate, whatever your assertion, your claim that you're making. Once you substantiate it and fill out your arguments and face all the opposition, it becomes clear to everybody as the arguments play out that you are right. Yeah, that's what I consider to be right. Now, when you say you were right to take this course of action, I don't consider that to be a matter about which one can be right or wrong. The only thing you can be right or wrong about are statements you make, claims you make, assertions you make, things like that. Your behavior, you could make a bad choice. You could be immoral or wicked, but behavior isn't correct or incorrect, which is what I really mean by right. Correct or incorrect in the same way that statements are.
Yeah. No, I agree. And so Yeah, I guess as it relates to, if it came down to like a debate type situation, and I was looking at, like having the correct stance, like making the best argument for that thing. I mean, generally that kind of is like, okay, you do your best in that situation. You kind of bring in the best tools, the best, it's all the same thing though. It's all, you're still, even when you're arguing a point with statements, you're still trying to get to the end point, which is correctness, like that is still the end place. And so if someone is not correct or is less correct, or they have other things in there, by your standard, it's like they haven't made it to the end, which is that piece of correctness,
Well, I mean, the thing is, when you're talking about argumentation, it's actually a pretty well laid out and fairly complex architecture to it that people have been writing about, studying about since rhetoric in the Greek times and stuff. But basically, there's some fundamental rules of argumentation that are as follows. If the person making the claim has the burden to substantiate it, unless the other person agrees to it. So in other words, the act of disputing the claim triggers the burden to substantiate. Also, a person affirming a change in the status quo, in other words, we should believe this instead of this, or we should do this, they have the burden to affirm, which is they have to prove their case. In other words, if both sides get up and do nothing, the neg wins. And that for any meaningful debate to occur, there needs to be a central statement or plan that serves as the object of debate. So in resolution debate is a statement like if the government is just, it will provide health care to its citizens. Or it's a plan like in policy debate where you go, here's how I think we should implement the topic area, which is something like the U.S. should substantially increase investment in infrastructure. And so you have an infrastructure plan to build more tunnels or something,
Yeah.
But the thing is, there has to be an object that's being affirmed, and the negation have a clear sense of what that object is, either a statement or a plan. And at the end of the day, it's the affirmative's burden to show that it ought to be affirmed under a framework they articulate. So usually that framework for public policy is sort of implicitly utilitarian. They're going to try to articulate a bunch of positive impacts from their prospective action, and the neg is going to try to either negate those positive impacts and or pile up negative impacts that'll outweigh and show therefore we should do it. That's the textbook standard old-fashioned utility calculus. I oppose that calculus in debate because I think it misses the point. It skips the first step, which is you should check for legitimacy before you determine whether the action is viable on a utilitarian ground.
Yeah, that's good. Do you think in normal conversation that you go more towards this statement route versus the planning route?
Planning? How do you have planning in conversation?
Well, if it's like about like how something should be done, like how something should be approached. That's where I'll stamp my foot down on those arguments, because I'm like, this is definitely the better way to get this. Okay, so for instance, right, I have a sensor example. So I was camping a few years ago, and there was a big rainstorm, and there was a tent that like wasn't really put up clearly, or like an awning, and it filled up with all this water, right? And all this water was above a bunch of other tents, and inevitably the snaps were going to come up and all this water was going to go down on a whole campsite, right? And so people are debating about how to move the water off of the tent. And so someone was like, oh, I'm going to get a bucket, and do this. And then, everyone had their idea. And so I was like, no, like the best thing we can do is find a hose and siphon it off the top so we can get it away from the tents as far as possible, and then the area doesn't get flooded. And so most people agree with me, but I had to argue it out with like one other person to be like, no, we're using the siphon method, and my way won, and it was definitely the better way to get the water off the tent. So like when I'm saying like fighting for like a plan of action, like that's how I'm kind of looking at it.
Interestingly, when you presented that problem, I thought siphon, and then I also thought push up the inside of the tent to make it fall off one side, you know.
But there was tents underneath. That was the problem.
So there were tents to the side of it?
Like all around it, basically.
Okay.
Underneath and on the sides, yeah.
I got it. The thing that never occurred to me was, and wouldn't have occurred to me until after I'd made the mess, was that you should move the water far away from the tents. So I thought about siphoning is like the first thing I thought, or actually the first thing I thought was push this middle of the tent up, make it fall off. And I thought no, because you might make it fall off onto the front side and it'll go in the hole of the tent. And then I thought, well, we siphon it, but it never occurred to me why siphoning would be the best way. It clearly is the best way. Now that you mentioned you want to move the water far away from the existing tent, so you want a long hose and siphon it. Since it's above ground level, it's not the obvious thing to do. But my NE provided me the answer, but it wasn't TE, right? If it were TE, I would have thought about the problem as entailing moving the water far away from the tents, and then come up with a siphon.
Yeah, interesting. So yeah. When you knew you were right. I think that's all I have to say on that subject.
I think I was saying this other thing about the subject, which is there are people who are very convinced they're right, and for whom that causes a great deal of difficulty. So, I mean, the thing is, if you want to know whether your sanctimonious rightness is actually correct, well, see how much difficulty it causes you. How much, it's like, it doesn't cause me much difficulty because people may or may not like it. They may or may not like my attitude, or may or may not call me arrogant or something. But at the end of the day, they're not going to win the argument. And the problem is there's a lot of types that are very confident they're right and either refuse to have the argument, simply can't win it, and don't change their mind, or find it offensive that you think it's important to have an argument, even if it's a matter of public policy, Like there was one girl, Chloe's mom, she was an ESFP. I think the mom was too, maybe an ISFP. And I just sort of casually started asking her. She said, well, I think that. I said, oh, well, why do you blah, blah, blah. I said, well, why do you want to know? Where are you going with this? She did not want to be questioned on TI at all, even if it was pleasant in my tone. And that kind of person, they know they're right. And they defend it by refusing to learn they're wrong.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I'll come up to with TI occasionally is, and I think it depends on the maturity of the person as well, is sometimes people will say, well, why don't you fight back on this? Why don't you, and it's like, I already know that in the context, that person isn't open to receiving different perspectives on the information. And then I'm like, it's just going to be a waste of time. Like, I already know how this cycle is going to play out, And so, whereas like, if I know the person is like open to a debate, then I'm like, okay, if this is going to be like a ping pong, like if we can actually have a conversation and get to some kind of solution together, great. But if not, then if I just know the person's going to like stonewall me the entire time, I'm like,
let me tell you the censor version of your thing that you just talked about. Okay, the censor version of it is Jeffrey's mom, who insists on continually trying to interface with this English teacher rather than negate. The thing that TI does well is it negates. And what negation can do is it can pin a person in. Words can pin a person in. So depending on how Jeffrey's mom chooses to use words, she could successfully attack and win the battle against the teacher. So the teacher's on the defensive, scrambling backward and scrambling to give him an A so that she doesn't get in trouble. But she doesn't trust, Jeffrey's mom doesn't trust her own ability, I guess, to execute what I'm saying adequately. So, and refuses to allow me to come in and be the advocate for it because, of course, way too much of a loose cannon. The thing is, I'm right, but she continues to try to interface. But she doesn't frame it as an abstract rule like you just did. You framed it as an abstract rule of, I already know how this pattern is going to play out. I already know whether or not they're receptive to change, blah, 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 blah. And so, of course, extroverted intuition will always say about that, you don't know shit.
Yep, they will. Why not throw it out there anyway? You know, and it's like it's not personal if it doesn't turn out the way you want it to. That's really good. So that's all the questions that I have, Eric. Thank you so much for. I like I love the discussion element. So yeah, it's been great having you on.
Your format was great. It was tons of fun. I think that, and you having these little slides up there is super cool.
Thank you. First time using this software and I didn't dick it up. So I'll link Eric's channel down below and you guys can check out his streams there, especially Eric's live streams are, they're a nice break up to my day. I know I tune them in at work whenever I can. So thanks, Eric. And thank you guys.
Adios.